I wanted to talk for a moment about David. So I'll be honest, I've been reading a lot about David lately, and I was getting more and more irritated at David the more I read about him. Just being honest. I mean, there is so much. There's just so much. From the way he treated Mikhail, taking her back from a husband who wept the whole way after they took her back because he was so in love with her, to the way he just is like, yeah, here's a bunch of Philistine foreskins for your daughter's hand in marriage. I'll just kill a bunch of men for their excess skin. Um, the way he didn't get what he wanted from Nabal, so he was just gonna go murder the man. I mean, I just, that's not even touching Bathsheba and that whole situation where I don't know how she's become the one who is like the bad guy here, because good luck saying no to the king whenever he says, yeah, you have to sleep with me. And then she loses her husband and her child. And it's all David's fault. And then the census and the plague and killing Saul's sons. It's just, there's so much. And I have to admit, getting bothered by it. There's just so much. It's like, how is this man a man after God's own heart? I don't understand. And then God told me David had daddy issues. And I was like, whoa, okay. No, I always knew that he probably had some issues with his dad because of the way that whenever the prophet came to anoint the king, David was left out in the fields while all of his brothers were brought in. It was like his dad deliberately did not think there was any way that David could be king, which says a lot about how he felt about David, right? So I already knew that. But then I realized he wanted Saul to be that father figure. And that's why he was a man after God's own heart, because God became his father. And not many people could see God in that way under the old covenant. But David somehow, because he lacked his own father's affection and love and care, was able to perceive the Lord as father. And that's why David did some of the things he did, was because of these male issues. He, I mean, part, I mean, do we ever think that part of him killing Goliath is, of course, because he was inflamed about somebody trashing God who had become like his father, but also to maybe prove himself to Saul or somebody else? I mean, you can see his brothers telling him to go away as soon as he gets there. Men just, they weren't open to David a lot until he amassed his own army. Um, but you see, like with the 200 Philistine foreskins, that just screams, I need your approval. It does. It just screams, I need a daddy's approval. I need you to approve of me. I need you to like me. I will do anything you say. It says Saul did not let him return to his father's household. Why? Why? Was it just to keep his enemies close? Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. Or was it because of a father-son relationship? You see, even when David spares Saul's life one time, Saul, after David gives a speech about, look, I saved your life, dude, I could have killed you, Saul says, David, is that you, my son? It's like, whoa. The emotional manipulation, that's really all David wanted, wasn't it? Was a dad who loved him. And he would do things to prove that he was a man, that he could get daddy's approval. And that's also why you don't see him treat women the best, I think. And also why he really wasn't a great dad, it seems like, especially to Tamar. Ooh. And I mean, at the end of his life, using Abishag as basically a human blanket. Like I said, I was getting really annoyed with David. I really was. And then, but you see that he didn't know how to be a dad necessarily to his own kids, even. And I was like, wow, the root of all this, all these things that I'm seeing that are like, dang, what is wrong with you, David? Is because he didn't have the proper male authority in his life to teach him and show him things. And of course, life was just different back in those times than it is now. But David was also known as a man of war, and that's why he wasn't allowed to build the temple. God said, "You're a man of war. I need a man of peace to build my temple." Was there something in David trying to prove himself as a man? I don't know. Yeah, he did. He had daddy issues, and that's why he loved the Lord and he wanted to prove himself to the Lord, and he wanted to build a house to the Lord, and he was able to write so deeply in some of the poetry we see in Psalms, really because he had to rely upon the Lord. Like, his earthly father was clearly not that excited about him, and Saul kept trying to kill him. Poor guy had zero male authority in his life to show him how to be a proper man, so he looked towards the Lord, which is the best thing you could possibly do. And that's why David had so many redeeming and wonderful qualities. And just like all of us, we're all complicated. I mean, we're not all slaughtering Philistines, but complicated still. And so I'm not making excuses for David, but it did give me a better just perspective. Was some of the things that he did were to try and prove himself, because of these daddy issues, because of wanting the approval of other men. So yeah, I mean, he did get that honor from men in his army, but then there was like the time whenever is it the Amalekites? I think it was the Amalekites. There's a lot of fights. Stole all the women and children, and all of his army turned on him and said, "Let's stone David." The men that were willing to die for him, like, let's just kill him. And it says he strengthened himself in the Lord. The reason why David, even after everything, even after his mistakes, was still a man after God's own heart was because he saw God as his daddy. And whenever he would screw up, guess where he ran? He ran to his daddy. Well, there was one time Nathan had to tell him to. But as soon as he realized what he had done, he said, "I've sinned against the Lord." And that, I think, would kill someone like David more than anything. More than anything you could do to him, that he would disappoint the Lord. Why? Because he saw him as his daddy. I don't know. I just found it really interesting. And if you get to the point where I was, where it's like, I don't understand, why is David doing this? Why is this like this? It just helped give me another layer to the character, to the personality and the life of David.